Welcome to this training video on the planning approach. Now in this video I will show you 4 positions with the side to move on the bottom of the diagram. We assume that the positions are all positional in nature and that they therefore require a planning approach. Now per position your task is 5-fold. Considering that you are the player at the bottom, so the player to move, please use the Silman thinking technique to find 1. Positive and negative imbalances for both sides, in other words, a positional breakdown. And remember the characteristics a position can have, so think of material balance or imbalance, king safety, the difference between minor pieces or pairs of minor pieces, for instance, good knight versus bad bishop or more subtle distinctions, the control of open files, rings, diagonals and squares, matters of pawn structure like space, weak pawns, free pawns, strong points, open or closed positions, development and initiative. So then your second step of the Silman thinking technique should be to figure out the side of the board you wish to play on. Preferably that is the side of the board where you have an imbalance that is in your favor. Then thirdly, you should dream up some kind of a fantasy position and don't calculate yet. And step 4 should be try to figure out if you can reach your fantasy position. And only then you look at candidate moves. In other words, you use then the analytical approach as a tool to see if you can achieve your aspirations. Okay, well, here we go. This is training position number 1. It is black to move. And your first task is to find out the positive and negative imbalances for both sides. And then go on to number 2, 3, 4 and 5. Please take a time out. Take as long as you need, and after the break I will be back to compare answers. Okay, let's compare answers. Let's do step number 1 of the Silman thinking technique here. Let's try and find out positive and negative imbalances for both sides. In other words, let's do a positional breakdown. Okay, here we go. What about material? Well, material is even, right? What about king safety? Well, both kings are relatively safe, but there's one interesting thing to note here. Black's king is sitting on the king side and white's king is sitting on the queen side. So we have opposite sides castling here. And this is an imbalance, of course. Okay, now we know that. What about the difference then between minor pieces, or pairs of minor pieces? Well, both sides have the pair of the bishops. They also have a knight. There also does not appear to be a bad bishop or a bad knight on either side, so no major imbalances there, rather just everything in balance. Okay, what about control of open files, rings, diagonals and squares? Okay, well there seems to be a difference there, because black has the semi-open C file at his disposal, and white has the semi-open D file at his disposal. This could be an indication for the strategy to follow. Okie dokie. Well, do we see any rings, diagonals and squares? Of course. We see, for instance, this nice diagonal pointing toward white's king position. And on the other hand, this diagonal is really quite passive yet for white's bishop. And then, of course, we see the long diagonal, the old famous dragon bishop. But unfortunately for black, there is a counterpart sitting here on d4, which means that most likely both bishops at some moment, sooner or later, will be exchanged. And that means that black cannot use the bishop for an attack anymore, but maybe that his king will start to feel a little bit more insecure, because he would be missing this important defender of his own king side there. Okay, well then what about squares? I suppose that black has a square here on c4 that he could use as some kind of a voorpost. He could bring the bishop there, but bringing the bishop there would allow white to exchange on his rather passive